Welcome to Career Channels, the official podcast of CareerSource North Florida. And now, on to the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Career Channels. Today is the last episode of our Job Seeker Readiness mini-series, and we're going to be talking about interview attire and follow-up. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start with you, Caroline. What are a few major things you look for regarding attire during an interview?
So my preference would be business casual. However, also keep in mind some people that have been unemployed, we don't know what their situation is. So if someone was to come in and have very nice, neat, clean jeans with a collared shirt, I wouldn't necessarily think that they looked unprofessional. That's something that we could dive into deeper with dress code if they got hired for the position. Also worth mentioning, if someone doesn't have interview clothes, there's a lot of resources out there that are willing to donate clothes, and people can get those resources through us if they might not have an appropriate outfit. Also modest, covering everything, not showing us too much skin.
Like Caroline said, even with if you don't have something, our local thrift stores, I know people kind of cringe when they hear thrift stores, but you can just walk in and say, I have an interview tomorrow, I need help, and they will pull it together for you. They really, really will. You can, and not charge you, whether they want you to bring it back or not, it doesn't matter. It might be $1 for an outfit, I don't know, but yeah, so don't let not having the appropriate work clothes, especially if you're changing industries or something like that, don't let it deter you. There are available options in the community.
Okay, so that's going over typical interview attire. Debbie, what's one of the worst mistakes you've seen as far as interview attire goes? Just to go on the opposite end.
So I actually want to go into kind of a little bit of a different direction. What I see our customers coming through the door. So we're an employment network. At any given point at any of our sites or affiliate locations, there's an employer in our space looking to hire somebody. Our customers come through the door wearing their pajamas, wearing shower shoes, wearing ripped jeans. They're not prepared to interview for a job. And some of those candidates are very, very eligible for those positions, but I wouldn't send them to an employer looking the way they do because they're not prepared to interview at the time they walk through our centers. Like I said, a lot of you want to interview for the position and you want to dress one level above. So for example, if you're going into construction, you're interviewing with the foreman, you want to wear a nice pair of slacks or a very nice pair of clean jeans and a collared shirt. You don't want to wear your flip-flops and your shorts because that's just not appropriate. You just don't want to do, if you're interviewing for a professional setting, business casual, and if you don't know what that is, research it with the company. Ask when you're asked to come in for an interview, what is the attire for the interview? That executive assistant or whoever's scheduling it is not going to set anyone up for the wrong attire. They'll even probably tell them what resources they could go to. But the challenges I see is people wearing flip-flops or shower shoes and pajamas inside of our work center and they're not ready to interview.
So I think that's important that she said that they call and find out what the norm is and what you just should wear at an interview, because some people may wear clothes that they think is fashionable outside or at the club, which is, something that where I look good in may not be acceptable when I come in through the doors here to where I'm dressing, where I'm preparing for an interview.
What'd you wear to the club?
Just something, they got holes in the jeans and just different, a tight fit.
What's wrong with holes in your jeans?
You wouldn't come in the interview with that, would you? With tight fit outfits, you wouldn't.
Shouldn't.
You shouldn't come in.
Shouldn't.
Yeah, even if the employer would accept a candidate with holey jeans and a crop shirt, you should never wear that type of stuff to an interview. You should always be modest and no holes in the jeans.
So what's one of the most common mistakes you've seen regarding interview attire?
I think what I see commonly is people not comfortable in what they're wearing. They tug, or they have to adjust, or their shoes are ill-fitting. I interview without a table in front of me or a desk in front of me, so I see people constantly fidgeting, and it's obviously not something they're comfortable wearing. It's not who they are. So I want to say dressing that is not, or attire that is not something they're comfortable in, something that doesn't convey who they are, something that doesn't match their personalities. If you walk in a black suit but you're the most bubbly person ever, you wore the wrong thing. Or vice versa, you wore this bright green suit, or bright yellow, bright colored, but you're just as dull as anybody. I think there's a lot of places that interview, a lot of employers have allowance for that because they want to see who you are. They want to know who you are. And part of that is conveyed through what you're wearing. Again, I'm on board with what Caroline said. I say often neat, clean, and covered. Otherwise, I am not the fashion police at all. But I think it's important that conveys another part of who you are. And that there's some alignment between what's represented on paper, what any credentials you have say, how you're interviewing with us and the language that you're using, and how you're dressed. It's not all these different, I want to say all these different mindsets that all should tie together in a nice, neat package.
I think the other thing I might add is some people tend to forget the scents they use, the perfume, the colognes, the cigarette smoke, that
The
can
marijuana
deter
smoke, we get that.
That can tend to turn a hiring manager off because they do consider is this going to be good for the environment, what we have with the climate? Too much perfume can be lack of hygiene can be another concern. Of course, like Diane just said, we have agriculture where people are coming in from the marijuana industry and
Medical marijuana, cannabis.
It is a very unique smell, so it can be overpowering
In a small confined space.
All right, so pretty much they need to dress appropriately and comfortably, because that can really affect the level of confidence they have in the interviews. Is that what you're saying? All right.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely.
So, Anthony, what's one piece of advice, or a few pieces, that you could give to someone who's looking to improve their interview attire, their wardrobe?
Is this during the interview or after the interview when they got hired? Or the process of going through other interviews?
Starting at the interview process.
Interview process, come presented neat, clean, but then starting to try to upgrade your wardrobe or look to see when you come into that interview what others are wearing in that industry and what they're wearing, and try to, maybe there's exchange closets, there's different resources available, like Caroline said, to help you to improve your wardrobe and maybe changing. You have 2 or 3 different types of wardrobes, or we just talked about you can have 1 pair of pants, but 5 different shirts, right? And no one really knows. You're just changing your shirt. So just slowly work on upgrading your wardrobe or borrowing it. At one point, borrow some stuff, borrow some clothes from a friend or from Goodwill or something like that, or buy something really cheap to improve your wardrobe.
I know one time we had a young man come in and his tie, and I'm all about wearing a tie to an interview for a business type position. He wore his tie. Anthony pulled him aside before his next interview, I think, and got his tie situation a little bit better. I believe the tie he may have had on was one he had when he was like 10.
Yeah.
And then he grew up and the tie wasn't quite what he needed to wear anymore. And that's just somebody pulling him aside and say, hey man, I got you. I'm gonna bring some ties tomorrow, stop by, right? Because Anthony knew he's gonna be interviewing with me next. So yeah, find somebody who will give you a truthful answer about how you look.
Yeah.
And be straightforward with you.
Okay. So we've talked about how to build your resume, how to tackle the interview, and now the attire for it. What kind of follow-up should job seekers be completing?
You mean follow up in reference to interview attire, or just in general from the resume to interview, the whole process?
In general, for the whole process.
I think for follow-up, and even before they begin, they need to follow up with who they're interviewing with before they interview to make sure they know what the company represents and they understand what they're applying for. And as they are in the interview process, they need to follow up with questions that they have. A lot of interviewees come in and they're like, I don't have any questions for you, but you should have questions for any employer that you're interviewing with. Doesn't have to be complicated. Hey, what's your workday look like? What's your benefits plan look like? Is there movement for wage range? Is there, what's the dress attire? What did I do on this interview when we're concluding? I mean, those are things to ask for. Hey, what's it like to work for you, Anthony? Are you a cool guy? Are you hard to work with? What does that look like? Anything, just so they've done the research the company, ask questions, because it's almost like speed dating. When you're talking to an employer, you're coming in and you're asking questions. I think some other follow-up pieces is when they leave, that firm handshake on the way out, and then returning a thank you note, whether that's via email or an actual letter, if that's what they want to do. Most people don't do snail mail anymore, but it's still accepted.
And one note on the thank you note, I do agree, definitely. Usually now a thank you email, but make sure that whoever you're emailing was actually the one that you interviewed with. Sometimes you might get a thank you note and it has one of your fellow supervisors on there. Make sure you have the right name. That'll go a lot farther than name thank you note.
So I think finishing strong, like Debbie said, towards the end, asking those questions, digging in, because we always talk about it's like a marriage. Now you're about to get into a marriage with us because you're going to be here 8 to 9 hours a day and what that looks like. So you're probably here more than you are home and awake. You want to know what type of person is managing you, what are they doing? And then Diane said something before, it's like, after the person leaves and sends you a thank you letter, is it really going to change your mind on how you felt about that person in the interview and how you scored them at that time? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't. Because I'm judging them right then at that time, at that moment, not the letter they sent me afterwards. It's a nice little thank you package. And
But if you had two candidates that were the exact same, it could boost that one a little bit. If you had two candidates that you felt the exact same about, maybe it would give one the upper edge. I mean, it can't hurt.
That's when we send them both to Diane. She just does the interview for us.
No, what? Don't send me somebody you can't live with, right?
Yeah.
And not all businesses have multiple stages for the interview. Sometimes it's just first interview is.
That's why that one shot that you have, make the most of it. Yeah. Get those questions. Ask those, what's next? What is the process next? Most people don't ask a lot of questions.
So, and I know this was about attire mostly, but we've gone to a phone screening being your first level interview. And while doesn't matter what you're wearing, if if you answer the phone like you just woke up from a Midsummer Night's Dream or whatever, that's not going to go over well. So I want to say dress up your voice a little bit, make it sound like you're actually interested. Smile, even though there's nobody to smile at. I mean, we do it voice for a reason. We don't want preconceived ideas based on appearance or anything like that. Just talk to us, but be you. If that's who you are, if you're the sleepy guy, then that's fine, but we're gonna judge you based on that, unfortunately, because that's all we have. The other thing, don't wear your cell phone. I meant to mention that before. As part of your outfit, leave your cell phone in the car. Because even interviewer, I get entirely distracted when it's buzzing or an alarm goes off or your social media notifications are coming through or your kid is texting to find out how it went or your boyfriend's texting because whatever. It's annoying. And not only just the alarm going off, but when I kind of like to see what happens when that does, because inevitably they'll pick it up and look as if it mattered. Or they'll answer the phone. It's like, whoa. But this interview is done. Thank you for coming in.
Speaking of that, I actually remember my interview here. My phone was on silent, but it was in my pocket. And at one point, it actually started ringing. And all I did was just hit the side button. Hopefully, you guys.
I still hired you.
Yeah.
I was about to say, hopefully, you guys didn't notice. So,
We were in here.
like I said, it was on silent, so you guys didn't hear the ring, but I felt it vibrating in my pocket. But it definitely would have been a better idea to have left it in my vehicle or have it turned off until the interview was over.
And another thing to think about too with technology is everybody has these smartwatches. There is a theater mode. So if you did have your phone in your pocket or your purse, you can put it on theater mode. So then no lights, no vibration, because that's also very distracting and awkward for the interviewer or the interviewee.
It's something we didn't talk about, but to consider in today's current way society looks at piercings, you might want to be mindful of what piercings you have and which to tone down on and what should be worn at work and what shouldn't. So I'm not gonna tell you what to wear because everyone's got their own reasons for it, but be mindful.
Or
that
just
might be distracting.
Even just make sure that's one of the questions you ask. Like, obviously you can see I have piercings, which I don't, just ears, but if the person did, is this acceptable? Would I need to remove these? Make sure the employer knows that you'd be willing to take out if it's against policy. So that doesn't take away from the employer wanting to hire you if you're qualified.
You can always go stalk the company, hang out in the parking lot, or like here, just walk in and see how they're dressed. Here, it's probably easier than most other places, but see how they're dressed, see what kind of shoes they're wearing, see what kind of, how they wear their hair, see how they, if tattoos are visible or not. And that kind of gives you a feel for what's acceptable and what's not. Although I might take more, might be more understanding of someone who's been here 6 months or a year versus someone walking through the door. But
so speaking of societal tendencies and tattoos are becoming more prevalent in the job force. And I'd like to know some of your takes on presentation of tattoos or coverage of them.
My personal preference is if the person interviewing, they cover them, but then during the interview at some point they might say, what is your company's policy on tattoos? I have tattoos, I've covered them for the interview. And then, in our case, it's not against policy to have tattoos. Obviously, if you stalk our employees from the parking lot, you will notice that some of our employees have tattoos, but that at least shows that that person took the extra step to try to, be modest and cover them. And then they found out, hey, it's cool. Or if it's not cool, then the employer sees, okay, they're willing to cover them. Unless, of course, you've stalked us in the parking lot and know we're cool with it. Then.
I think being mindful of where you are and when you are. So if you do get hired at whatever employer and they do have tattoos, sometimes there's times and places that coverage is preferable than others. So maybe if I go into an employer's office that is very professional, I may keep my tattoos covered. If I have a sleeve, I may wear a long sleeve shirt just out of conservatism. I can't say that word. Conservatism. Out of being conservative.
Sound like the Italian chef. What is the Muppet?
Yeah, thank you. So in order to be conservative with the employer, because everyone is different, you just don't know what you might be walking into.
And the frontline supervisor might be more acceptable,
right,
or accepting than the staunch
CEO,
whatever. It just kind of depends on, or vice versa, really. Just depends.
But I do think communication is key with anything, and because tattoos are part of your attire, because they are part of your skin and they are seen, just like piercings. There should be some conversation with that tentative employer of, hey, I have a sleeve, is that a problem? Or I like tattoos, is it okay if I wear a skirt or capri or whatever? Kind of thing.
I think the content, I don't think the tattoo itself or the sleeve or whatever's out there, I don't think that's the issue for me. The issue is what could be conveyed in that piece of art, because there are, while I don't have any issues with tattoos or whatnot, there would be some things that people decide to write on their bodies that I don't want here,
right,
and will not have here. So and I will reserve the right to ask you to cover those if you are here, but if I see them, I'll probably have a second thought about having hired that person, because that's obviously who they are and what they want to share with people, and not appropriate here, not appropriate anywhere, frankly, but not here.
All right, so quick recap for attire during interviews is neat, clean, and covered, but make sure that what you're wearing, you're confident wearing, because if you're comfortable in it, then you can feel more confident during the interview. Don't come in with holes in the jeans or unwashed or overly scented items. And definitely do your research during the interview to figure out what attire is appropriate and what's also expected to be worn during regular business hours. And if you need to improve your wardrobe, don't be scared to go to a local thrift store. You might be able to find something that's brand new for very cheap. So if you or someone you know is looking for help to ace that next interview, give us a call at 850-973-9675 or go to careersourcenorthflorida.com, and we'll connect you with one of our talented career development specialists to help get you started today. Thank you all for joining us, and remember, you can find your career path here with Career Channels.
You've been listening to Career Channels, the official podcast of CareerSource North Florida. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about CareerSource North Florida and the services they provide, visit careersourcenorthflorida.com. That's careersourcenorthflorida.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.